It's Wednesday, the 21st of February, and of course, a lot of things are happening in the news. We'll be getting into discussion about the various things that are taking place in the world and around the world and all in that space. So, in Gaza City, death and famine have taken hold amid the Israel war and all along those lines. So, that's one of the things that's going on in the Middle East, and Syria is blaming Israel for a deadly airstrike on Damascus. So that is something else that is going on, as definitely it looks like the Israeli missile struck on Damascus, and definitely that is going to add some of the tension to the Middle East as well. And the U.S. has vetoes a UN call for a Gaza ceasefire, and actually there was a call for a ceasefire from right here in Durham, North Carolina as well. China blasted the U.S. veto on the Gaza ceasefire, and it definitely had some harsh words about that veto. So definitely that is going on, and definitely the war in Ukraine is continuing. So Navalny mother goes to the court over official refusal to release her son's body. So Yulia Navalny is raising hopes for a renewed Russian opposition, and she will face huge challenges. And if I remember correctly, that particular person is the wife of that slain dissident there in Russia. And U.S. government lawyers are denying charges against Julian Assange were politically motivated. So definitely that is something going on as well. At the UK High Court, here's arguments in Assange's U.S. extradition case without him. So U.S. lawyers are urging UK court to block Julian Assange's extradition appeal bid. So we'll see where this all goes in that case of the WikiLeaks founder and all in that space. So definitely be interested to see how all of that transpires. And Putin says Russia will push further into Ukraine after the chaotic fall of Avdiivka. So definitely that is something going on. And in a chaotic retreat, hundreds of Ukrainian troops are feared to be captured or missing. So it does seem like there's been a setback of some sort in that particular war, but we'll see if that's the case or not the case. The EU has agreed to new sanctions on Russia, blacklisting companies in mainland China for the first time. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news, and China has a lot to lose, and U.S. is considering sanctioning Chinese firms aiding the Russia war. So that's some of the things going in on the news. I'm gonna bring in Rick and Nick, and particularly Rick, and see what he's got going on and all in that space. And I might go get a cup of water as well. So how are things going in your world?
I'm barely awake. I only have one contact lens in, so probably only half my brain is working. So we'll see if that improves things over usual.
Well, wait a minute. You're a mental person, so half your brain is better than a lot of people's regular brains.
Well, right. My Twitter handle is Dumbass Genius. We'll see whether it's the dumbass or the genius part that's been disabled.
Okay, we're going to see which part of those has been kicked out and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. You know, I had an interesting meeting yesterday, met with some architects at one of my jobs because they're trying to figure out what to do with an old police station, and they're thinking about maybe making it into a cultural center or a community center or something along those lines. So they want to learn from one of my places of work about the history of that place of work and how they can make it work in tandem. So there is several architectural firms that are bidding on this space, and it's always interesting because one of my friends said what they need to do is just demolish it, because there's some people that want to save buildings that might have historical consequences, and I don't know that building necessarily has any great historical benefit, but they are some folks that are trying to figure out ways to keep it engaged and all along those lines. So just really quickly, because that's something that comes up in the news in the world. What are our thoughts about attempts to preserve buildings that used to be used for one thing, but now you got to figure out whether you're going to turn them into condos, whether you're going to turn them into centers, or whether you're going to turn them into whatever folks might turn them into. Because I know that even in California, there have been a number of historical buildings that have been converted and have been used for things that were different than what they were originally created for.
So LA is the home of a lot of not great architecture because we don't have weather. So, and we've got, the movie studios. So you can throw up any old thing and just crazy things. We've got a thing called the Witch House, which is, it looks like a witch lives. You don't have to use brick construction or durable construction. So I don't know if the building's ugly, I don't know that you have to preserve it unless historical things happened.
Well, the problem with the United States is we really don't have much history. I mean, if you look at it, a couple hundred years max. When you go to Europe, then you start seeing some really old buildings. In other words, you look at buildings they're built in the 1100s. You go to Cairo and they're built like 2000 BC. Same with Greece. So there's definitely a lot of history. It's just not in the United States.
Yeah, that's a reason my kid moved to England, because she's a historian. She loves history.
Yeah.
Nothing in LA is it's a rare building that's older than 100 years.
Right. It's historic. But also the thing is, what the demographics are showing, the quality of life today is better in Europe than it is in the United States. You have less crime, good healthcare, more egalitarian society, which doesn't exist in the United States. The United States is turning into the class of the very rich and the very poor.
You and I were talking before the show started that boomers and Gen X, people over age 45, have 94% of the privately held wealth in America.
Yeah. So if you're young, you're poor is basically the bottom line. And if you're older, you're wealthier, which is the demographics I see also empirically. So, and then the real problem is the disparity. That's just one thing. And the news never brings out the disparity because, frankly, most of the newscasters in major media do very well. I watch The View and I go, oh, there's Whoopi. She makes $100,000 a day doing her show. Like, no kidding. And Joy, $100,000 a day. The rest of the cast doesn't make that much, but they all make over $1 million a year. So the reason they don't talk about wealth disparity is they're on what I call the other side of the line. They're on the wealthy side of the line. Now, 90% of the population is not on that side of the line. They're on what I call the other side of the line. The politicians don't bring it out because then they would have to expose themselves as to how greedy their contributors are, how greedy they are, how parsimonious they are to poor people. And what they want to do is get people to believe in other things that are more important than their economic salvation. So we go to the demographic you just said. 15 out of $16 or 14 out of 15 is owned by people over age 45. But more important, the Gini coefficient in the United States, the ability to move from class to class, is at an all-time low. So if you're born into poverty, you'll die in poverty. If you're born
Nick, along those same lines and everything, part of the poverty conversation is the notion of credit. And we may be having one of the biggest credit companies of all time. I wish Shasta was here, but he's not, because there is a possible option of Capital One and Discover merging together. And so we will have one of the newest, biggest credit card companies that could be almost a monopoly in the credit card business. Because apparently Capital One is going to buy Discover for $35 billion. Speaking of that money that's going around, this big time money and everything.
It's a way to tap money out of what they call usurious interest rates. Now, years ago, you used to have usury laws that you couldn't have more than 18% per year on your credit cards. Then what happened is they changed the law, allowing, if you organize in a state that doesn't have usury law, you can pass on huge interest rates to people, which some of my credit cards, the current rate, if I don't pay it off, which I did today, 25%. Okay. You know how big that is, 25% interest per year. And people are carrying over $1 trillion in debt at some levels like this. So we have a very serious economic problem in the United States in so many different fronts that none of the politicians address.
Well, they
They'd
want to
rather
talk. They want to talk about that, and there's apparently some new news on that economic front, including with some of the rich folks and everything. Because I'd love to hear maybe Rick's got some thoughts about this. But Jeff Bezos has unloaded 50 million shares of his Amazon stock in February and saved millions by moving to an area that you like to everything
Florida.
moving to Florida. So he has unloaded around 2.4 billion in Amazon stock, bringing the recent sales to 50 million shares. And it does look like he is completing his 8.5 billion share sale plan. And speaking of Amazon, it looks like Amazon will be replacing Walgreens in the Dow Industrial Average next week. So it looks like they're going to be using Amazon instead of Walgreens. So Walgreens dropped after
Florida doesn't have income tax. Florida doesn't have
Florida
state.
has no state income tax, and nor does Washington State. But they passed a law creating a capital gains tax. Jeff Bezos, in his infinite wisdom, being, remember, rich equals greedy, okay, not wanting to pay the Washington tax, actually moved to Florida. And he bought a house in Florida, and he domiciled there so he could unload his Amazon stock and not have to pay the Washington capital gains tax. Okay, you have to make synonymous. Rich equal greedy, with certain minor exceptions. There's certain people that are actually rich and generous, but they're rare. Most of them, to become rich, you need to be greedy, which is one reason I recommend the book.
Well, it would be tough to when you're talking about that much money. If Bezos sells what $2 billion worth of stock or something, and one of his accountants says, if you move to Florida, you can save $200 million. Jeff Bezos hasn't been rich forever. The guy who wasn't rich, in his memory, is like, well, 200. That's 200. He's like, I guess I have to move. OJ moved to Florida.
But Rick, it's worse than you think, as David K. Johnson would say. There is a opportunity zones that he can take that money and reinvest it and pay no federal capital gains tax. So now you think about it. He could literally unload $8 billion, take the money, reinvest it in what they call opportunity zones. This was passed by the Bush administration by the backing of a guy named Sean Parker, who was one of the original founders of Napster and then the head of Facebook very short period of time. What he did is say, well, we need to help opportunity zones. In fact, we need to help the rich. To do that, we need to eliminate the capital gains tax. But we can't do that because poor and middle class people still need to pay it. So what they did is they created, and there's 2,000 of them in the country, opportunity zones. Most people listening on this network don't even know opportunity zones exist, let alone it's a big tax shelter. So here's what they do. They unload their stock, Amazon stock, $8 billion. He turns around and invests in opportunity zones, buy real estate throughout the United States. He holds it for 10 years. He can then go sell it and pay no capital gains tax.
So $8 billion, the federal taxes on that would be $3 billion. So
it'll pay nothing. Hey, Rick, listen to me. He will pay at the end of the day $0 in capital gains.
Speaking of zero and everything, and this is one of Rick's favorite topics, and I saw an article in AP, and I'm going to recite part of the article and everything, but I think it's very interesting because a lot of times we talk about the nature of what's going on and whether people are wanting to work and the coming of the robot. So in an AP article that was out earlier today, they said that they were trying to keep up with the consumer demand. This company called Batesville Tool and Die, they began seeking 70 people to hire last year. It wasn't easy. Attracting factory workers to a community of 7,300 in the Indiana countryside was a tough sale, especially having to compete with big name manufacturers like nearby, like Honda and Cummins engines. So job seekers were scarce. As a matter of fact, Jody Flutterman, the CEO, said you could count on one hand how many people in the town were unemployed. It was just crazy. So they could count how many people were unemployed, but they managed to fill just 40 of their vacancies. Enter the robots. The company invested in machines that could mimic human workers and in vision systems, which helped its robots see what they were doing. So the Batesville experience and others like it have been replicated countlessly across the United States for the past couple of years. So chronic worker shortages have led many companies to invest in machines to do some of the work they can't find people to do. They've also been training the workers have to use advanced technology so they can produce more with the less. So what's our thoughts? Because apparently there's a productivity boom that's going on, because they're saying the result has been an unexpected productivity boom, which helps explain a great economic mystery. How has the world's largest economy managed to remain so healthy with brisk growth and low unemployment despite brutally high interest rates?
So we're going to have to figure out a way to pay people for doing less, because as already old people, rich people have more privately held wealth, a bigger percentage than ever before. You need the whole population to have money to keep the economy going. If you can't have a completely impoverished, poor middle class, and some countries are experimenting with guaranteed basic or minimum income, where just everybody gets money. And the Republicans in America look at that and scream socialism. But it's not really socialism if you need to get money to everybody in a country so your economy doesn't just sputter to a halt.
But see, the problem is they say in Pawn Stars that ain't happening. Remember, the election will not be about the fact that most people live in poverty and squalor. They're going to vote on different lines. They've already figured it out. See, rich people, one thing that they have in common, they work harder and they are smart. So they realize that people are going to vote based on things like immigration. Fear sells, greed sells. Okay. Well, they don't want you to become greedy, because then you'd be rich like them. So they want you to be fearful. Here's a fear: immigration. These people are going to cross the border, take your jobs, not realizing the robots are going to take your job anyway. Immigration, their fear. Remember, the thing is, they're foreigners. They're from different countries. They talk strange. So immigration is going to move the election. Another thing that's going to move the election: abortion. Notice neither one of these will improve your life, by the way. Your life sucks. It'll continue to suck unless you're in the top 10%, then your life's good. And abortion isn't going to, but it scares you. You're going to jail because you killed an unborn baby, or they took away your rights. It will not help you at all in your daily life. Violence in the United States. Oh, somebody out there is going to shoot you. It's going to be bad for you. Did you see on these three hot topics, which will determine the election, none of them will improve your life. None of them will improve your economic situation. None of them will advance you, because the Gini coefficient is so low in the United States. But they know.
Hey, Nick, speaking of all of that, but there is something that a lot of people are afraid of, and they're constantly afraid of, and everything. And we kind of alluded to it, and definitely with the Ukraine war and with the war in Israel. But I did not realize, and apparently it's something going on, and maybe Rick would be interested since his daughter lives in this area. But even the UK is getting into the nuclear war business, and apparently they have confidence in their nuclear system, despite the fact that they had a misfire because the Trident missile test failed for the second time in a row on yesterday. So there is some questions about their nuclear deterrent, because apparently they also want the nuclear deterrent as well. So I know India wants nuclear deterrent, the UK wants nuclear deterrent. How many countries are we going to have with nuclear weapons? And are there
we have close to a dozen.
We have accidentally hit the wrong button.
We have close to a dozen, and if you want the region most likely before Putin got so aggressive was India, Pakistan. Both India and Pakistan have nukes, and they've been fighting since Pakistan was created over Kashmir, which is this super high altitude place that both nations claim. But I want to go back to wealth for just a sec. What I've learned about 2 keys to generating generational wealth: don't have a bunch of kids, because then you don't have kids to fight over who gets the inheritance. And don't let your dad marry a new, younger, sexy lady, because she'll come in. She might already have kids. That second wife will glom onto it. And then you're going to spend years and years fighting over.
That is absolutely true. It's one of the biggest things that destroy intergenerational wealth is multiple children. People don't know that, but that is the biggest thing. But the
Well,
other thing, we used to have in the United States a federal estate tax. I worked
okay.
in that area for 17 years. And the whole theory is that people should work for their living and not inherit it. Okay. Now, the thing is, here was the problem. The wealthy people, again, remember, they're smarter than you. Just realize that. Not you, Rick, but they're smarter than most people. And they're greedier than you. Okay. Which might be your real problem. You're not greedy enough. Okay. So the thing is, so what they did is they created Frank Lutz created this thing and called it a death tax, and they scared the bejeebers. Oh, you die! These people are going to take all your money and stuff like that. It was one of the few leveling planes we actually had in the United States of America to create an egalitarian society, if you really believe in equality. Now, they basically eliminated it in 2010. That's how strong it was. And then they pushed the credit up so much you have to be super rich to even look at it.
What, make
Well,
like 12 million more than, leave more than
That's
12
right.
million or something, right?
By the way, it is indexed for inflation. So it goes up as inflation does. Notice the minimum wage is not indexed for inflation because that affects poor people. Remember, we have two laws, one for the rich and one for the poor. The poor people, you're supposed to live in poverty and squalor. Just realize that. Rich people are supposed to have the laws generously in their favor, which they did. And so now it's pushed up where it's not even a contest. So intergenerational wealth will continue at a very rapid rate, and that top 1% will continue on their holdings forever, creating a non-egalitarian society in the United States. Your best opportunity, if you're a young person and you're listening to this, move to Europe. Get the heck out. This place will not change. It's too big, too old, too corrupt. You need to go to Spain, Portugal, Italy, Germany, somewhere in Europe, and get the heck out of this place. Because
Plus, with
Hey, quick question for both of you.
hold on
Let
one
me
sec,
say-
one sec. But on
Yeah,
one,
go ahead.
but wait. So, plus, people are going to be living a lot longer with AI driven and tech driven improvements in medical care. So
Right.
so people are going to, if you're well-to-do, you might have a lifespan of 100 or more on average, and that's one of the drivers of intergenerational wealth is people actually dying and passing on. If nobody dies, then
Hey, Rick, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to date myself here by mentioning an old TV show and everything. But we have become the nation of the Brady Bunch, because definitely what y'all are talking about in terms of generational wealth and some of the broken families, the broken family, which was featured on the Brady Bunch, is become very common, or the blended family. So I can't tell you how many friends that I have that have been blended families. Shucks, my brother might be, if he ever marries that young lady that he's engaged to, part of a blended family and everything. So I just wanted y'all's take on that, because there are some people, even in the political lanes, that are thinking that the family structure is not what it used to be, and therefore it is a broken family system, because we have so many people that are divorced. I forget what the divorce rate is right now, and a lot of people, myself included, when we're looking at our pool of people in the single lane, a number of them will have kids, and in some cases grandkids and everything. So just
the 70s were crazy for that. My dad got married 3 times, my mom 3 times, my stepmom 3 times. I had 4 siblings, and basically nobody had the same 2 parents.
Well, unfortunately, I came from the same parent household for like 60 years plus, and my family, there was like 0 divorces through 2,000 relatives. There was 1 divorce, 2,000, very Catholic type family. But then I found out that on my mother's side, we were Plantagenets, which a lot of people don't even know what that is. I'm a direct descendant of King Edward III of England and Fernando III of Spain, who was the king of Castile and Leon, which makes me technically Hispanic, which I think is funny. I go, well, I can check the box because I'm a direct descendant of.
Once you have royalty, you can trace your lineage. We've seen.
Oh, I do. I trace it all the way back to 800. So I'm a direct descendant of Robert the Bruce, King of Scotland, direct descendant of Capet, King of France, direct descendant of Edward III, King of England, and direct descendant of Fernando III, and also Alfonso I of Portugal. Now, why how can you do all that? Intermarriages were incredible among the royals, As a matter of fact, they didn't have divorces, they had annulments, because what happens, everybody would marry their cousin, because royals are always supposed to marry royals. So how did I get here? Well, what happened is we lost the battle in Dunbar in 1650, and Alexander Inez got shipped over here as an indentured servant after Oliver Cromwell and the parliamentarians beat his butt at the Battle of Dunbar. And so he served as indentured servant in 1650 for 7 years. And then I just descended down from there. But because of that, I have a book called The Plantagenets, which is a interesting history of my direct descendants.
So
now, the other thing is, if you're royals, there's a couple things that happen. One, you have primogeniture. Unless your dad is the oldest male child, you basically get disinherited. And I had a lot of females, so you can be a direct descendant of royals and basically have no kingdoms, castles, or titles, which is where I sit. But fortunately, my great-grandfather founded a bank called Bank One, and he put it in an entailed estate, which lives on even today, which is one reason I live very well. Now, that's the real problem. I became a lawyer. What happened to making money as a lawyer? Forget it. Your best way to make money is A, inherit it, B, marry into it, or C, become a doctor. I didn't become a doctor, and so I didn't marry into it, so I chose number one. I inherited it. Now, this is the problem with the United States of America. You should be able to make it by working. You can't anymore, unless you hit the lottery. And they always show the lottery winner. Okay, Jeff Bezos, by the way, is a lottery winner. He won the lottery, made billions, good for him. If you win the lottery, you make it in the United States. Hard work and effort, forget it. So if you want a good life, go to Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. Leave the United States. If you're not,
but Nick, not everybody can leave the United States. But just really quickly, but if you do, but there's a major rich person that is running into problems and everything, because Letitia James has said that she is prepared to seize Trump's building if he can't pay his money that he owes and everything. So he might be losing that building of all of that.
He's not going to lose the building. Give me a break. And by the way, she did the typical grandstanding. By the way, if I was her, I'd say the same thing. I've actually said that on judgments I've won to my opponents. Say, look, I'm going to seize your stuff because you basically put a lien and you auction at the courthouse step. So it's mainly a scare tactic. But what's going to happen, he's going to post bond like he did with the other. It's going to go to appeal. It's going to be reversed. It's more of the circus sideshow. You know, I did read through that opinion. He has losers in his portfolio of litigation. That's not one of them. You know, his biggest problem will actually be the criminal case of the money that went to Stormy Daniels. That is the serious problem, because that's criminal. And in law, they have this thing called res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. Well, money all of a sudden appears in someone's bank account and you can't explain it, and then that person goes away. You take that in front of a jury. What other can it be but a payoff? Okay, I can see a jury saying, "Yep, you're right," and then he's a convicted felon. And
so he's got 91 indictments being presented.
But a lot of them are repetitive indictments. In other words, you get indicted 40 times for the same cause of action.
But the key is it's by 4 different prosecutors or DAs. Yeah. And those people's jobs depend on not losing big cases.
Yeah, well, also they're getting publicity, but you look for what his worst. It's like a stock. When you look at litigation portfolio, you look at stocks, right? What is his worst stock in his portfolio? It's not this. It's not his. You know, he's going to be off the ballot. It's Stormy Daniels. There's absolutely no question that he's got a lot of explaining to do. How'd $300,000 end up in her magic bank account? Okay. And that is a criminal case. These are all civil. A lot of the civil ones, who cares about? And some of them are like, hey, he was involved in insurrection. You know, I look through the data on that. I'm going, he's got defenses everywhere on stuff like that. But Stormy Daniels, I'm not sure where
he's got an issue with Stormy Daniels. But speaking of that, there are some people that are saying that he grandstanded and everything, because apparently he came on Fox recently at a Fox town hall, and he was co-opting Navalny's legacy as a kind of a smokescreen for his own legal.
He he said that what Russia did to Navalny is similar to what the U.S. is doing to him, which is.
Okay. Well, I mean, at a certain point, he may be correct. In other words, some of when I look through his portfolio of lawsuits, some of them are politically motivated, but some of them doesn't mean all of them. Some of them actually have a legitimate cause of action. And like I said, as I'm looking through his portfolio of lawsuits, and I haven't seen all of them, because remember, this guy's been to court more than I have. I mean, he lived, or his companies have lived in court. I mean, the guy loves to pay legal fees, I guess.
4,900 lawsuits. He knows how to use the legal system.
Yeah, right. But he usually uses it for civil. But he's got this one. It's almost like this. All you need is one bad one to sink his battleship. And the bad one I saw is Stormy Daniels.
Well, speaking of bad ones and everything, and not just Trump, but definitely the indicted ex-FBI informant told investigators he got Hunter Biden dirt from certain Russian sources, and Republicans are deleting references to that FBI informant from their impeachment interview request to the letter. So apparently there's a possibility of some impeachment of Mr. Biden as well. So is this actually going to take place? Are we going to have another impeachment hearing in the middle of an election, or is this just another political smokescreen?
They lost their main witness. Now, Fox News won't tell you this, but they were a bunch of this. Well, like Lance, you were there when Lance, my Trumpy friend on Naked at Night, we argued about it, and he said, "Oh, well, there's another. There's not. This is the main witness that said that there was bribery going on, and it turns out Russia was just making stuff up and feeding it to this guy." But nobody on the Trump side will hear that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the person was basically discredited. So I think the whole Hunter Biden thing is going to go right down the toilet. There's going to be no impeachment.
And the main argument that against like Hunter, getting money to pipeline to Joe, bribery pipeline, is Biden. By the time he left the vice presidency, he'd been in national level political office for 44 years.
Yeah.
Had accumulated not great wealth, but he paid, his deal was buying houses for his family. He had 3 houses, which is not that much. He had a good job for 44 years. So yeah. And then when he leaves, in the 4 years that he's out of office, he and Jill Biden make $16.5 million giving speeches and writing books, which is what happened. So it is crazy that a guy with that much political experience and who's making more than $4 million a year would do any kind of bribery. He's not, Biden's not a super genius, but he's not an idiot. He wouldn't jeopardize all of that and all his family's.
Yeah, I just don't see the bribery thing going anywhere. I think if they're going to take down Biden, the biggest thing he has against him is his age. I don't care what Jacoby says, and Jacoby's not here, so I can speak against him. When you get older, your cognitive abilities decline. And the thing is, even chess players like Garry Kasparov, he quit at age 50 because he knows from 50 to 60, it's a slide downward.
But part of the argument is that there's only about a 2.5 year difference. So if you're going to make that argument about Biden, you got to make it about Trump as well, because Trump is not that much younger and everything, and he's also made some serious gaffes as well.
I test my memory. When a movie comes on, I try to name each actor as they come on, and I'm 63, and I'm already like freaking. I for the life of me, I couldn't remember Julianne Moore. Like I had to like.
Yeah, and the thing is, here's another statistic, because working in the pension area, you get all these age statistics. When you're age 90, your odds of living to 91 are 50%. And when you're age 91, the odds of living to 92 is 50%. Frankly, you're dying. When you're in your 80s, your odds of getting dementia increase to the point where by the time you're 85, 1/3 of them will have dementia. So, he is on a slide, no matter what Jacoby says. It
No,
doesn't
but
matter.
But
because if Trump is elected, he
I'm
would be
sorry,
in his 80s as well.
but there's an argument to be made. All right.
The difference. Okay.
So when
Yeah.
Biden appears and he doesn't mistake Mexico, he didn't mistake Mexico for Egypt. He knew what he was talking about. He just said the wrong thing, the way a grandpa says the wrong name for a grandkid. You know, it doesn't. But what he needs, he probably needs to get out there and cuss a lot. We know that in private, there's all this reporting that in cabinet meetings, he cusses up a storm about ridiculousness. He gets really pissed. And I'd like to see some of that in public, where an angry Joe Biden. And now I forgot my point because I'm 63.
Someday he'll forget the cuss words and he'll go, I forgot what the cuss words were.
But the deal about Joe Biden is experience. More than 47. He's got 20 more years of experience than in national level politics than anybody else who's ever run for government, which makes him pretty skilled. Only 18 people in all of U.S. history have served for longer in the Senate.
Okay, that's really great. But the counter argument is, great. Where did that experience get us? Well,
it got it like an infrastructure bill. Now you can say if you're a Republican, you say, well, that was just pork. But
it was pork. It's big pork. As a matter of fact, it makes me sick that the people in Silicon Valley are getting a grant of $1.6 billion, not a loan, a grant. This is corporate welfare going to Silicon Valley so they can build chip factories here. Why? Because only 12% of the chips are made here. That doesn't mean you just give them a blank checkbook so rich people get richer. So the infrastructure bill was the biggest pork bill, supported by the Republicans because of the Republican donors, the Democrats because they think they're saving the world. And neither one's working. What's working is this. Everybody listening here is deeper in debt because of the Democrats and the Republican Party. Thank you very much. Now,
part of the infrastructure bill was roads and other things that are definitely needed to be improved.
40 years of experience got us $1 trillion in debt every year that he sat in office. Is that a good experience to have? I would say no. So I don't think a person who has a lot of experience necessarily is good for the job, and Joe Biden isn't. But the question is,
but better than the guy with zero experience, Trump.
Well, he doesn't have zero. He has 4 years experience. Okay?
Right now he has 4. Yes,
and then he has many years of running companies into bankruptcy. So here's your choice. This is like a horrible choice. You got one guy who's old, experienced, and horrible. Another guy who's younger, experienced, and also horrible.
So okay. I don't expect miracles out of government. I just want to have non-crazy government until the robots can take over and do a better job.
Well, I think anybody could do a better job, but the problem is that both parties have a stranglehold. Trump has a stranglehold on the Republican Party. Biden has a stranglehold on the Democratic Party. These power mongers, very similar to Putin, you want to know who's close to Putin, these two guys, keep young people down and repressed. Okay, so all the young people are listening. You are being screwed by these two old Gen Z or what they call it, baby boomers, who are screwing you out of your Social Security. It ain't going to be there, buddy. Social Security goes bankrupt in 10 years. They're screwing you out of Medicare. It's going to be gone in the next 5 years. They're putting you heavily into debt, 34 trillion in debt. So what are your choices? There aren't any good choices. So you do what your daughter did, Rick, leave the United States of America.
She didn't do it for economic reasons. She did it because she read some British novels in junior high or high school, and she saw the movie Titanic. She fell in love with history. She wanted to move to a place where you walk down the street and you pass a building from the year 1200.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And the thing is, Europe will have a better quality of life than the United States. If Europe didn't run into those crazy wars, it would be better off today. But because World War I, World War II, they decimated themselves. Absent the wars, you're better off living in Europe than the United States of America on a going forward basis. Because
Nick, can I ask you the question that people ask me when I have asked about the folks that want to go to Africa or other countries and everything? Sometimes it is a rhetorical question that is asked and everything, but one of the things that people will ask folks when they talk about wanting to move to other countries, if you hate America so much, why don't you move to those other countries and everything? Why are you living here in the United States? This is a rhetorical question I've been asked, so I'm going to throw it back to you and everything, since you have mentioned this love of Europe and everything, because that's a rhetorical question that many people get asked, even in the African American community, when they cite some of the disadvantages that exist in the African American community, but some of the things that are going on positively in some of the African nations. And a lot of times people say, well,
you move to Morocco. Morocco is a great country. There's less crime in Morocco. It's a growing country. They're welcoming to foreigners. They're Islamic, but they also, they accept other religions, So there's certain African countries. The other one is Namibia, I think would be great. Tanzania.
Nigeria seems to be like, if you live in a big city in Nigeria, that seems
or Kenya. Kenya has some strong chemistry.
Kenya, we have a lot of people that listen to us in Kenya, which is good. But my preference would be Morocco. I mean, the thing is, I'm pretty biased toward that. And one of our producers actually has a restaurant in Marrakesh. Mm-hmm. So it's not a bad place to be, and to have some mobility and have some freedom, and not have to deal with the crazy people in the United States of America. But you have to have mobility to be able to do that. And I think your daughter did the right thing, maybe for the wrong reason, but definitely the right move is to move to the United Kingdom.
Well, I mean, if she went there and her PhD was paid for, paid for at King's College London, and so I mean, she freaking loves it, and we go over there, and it's weird because you go to London. And as a foreigner, you're like, "Ooh, London," and you're all excited, but you're in a city of 8 million people who are like wandering around going, "Frickin'."
Speaking of that and everything, hey, Nick, you'll love this one. I wish Debbie was here, but she's not. Well, maybe she'll come back on World Politics or something like that. But Hawaii is considering a $25 tourist tax to cover the fire and environmental damage that area had and everything. So it looks like they're, all those folks that want to go to Hawaii, a part of the United States, they might be paying a tourist tax because, of course, we know they had those horrible fires and other environmental things. So they want to try to cover the cost. So what is our thoughts around a tax to cover what was basically a natural disaster?
Hawaii's not stupid. They know where their bread is buttered. They passed some kind of amendment to their state constitution that makes it illegal to open carry. And this thing will probably go to the U.S. Supreme Court. It'll take 3 years, and the Supreme Court will knock it down. But for 3 years, Hawaii can say, "Come to Hawaii. We don't have a bunch of maniacs with guns walking around, and give us $25 so we can rebuild."
I think it's a great idea. As a matter of fact, Venice, I think, should have a tourist tax. It is so bloody crowded there. It's such a beautiful place. They should charge people $100 a day to come in.
Venice, you can buy a little apartment in Venice for about the same price as you can buy an apartment in Van Nuys. Venice, one of the world's most beautiful city, because of floods. They have they have stacks of what look like are folding tables along every main street. And what happens is when it floods, I guess city workers run out and they set up the tables, and that makes raised sidewalks that are 3 feet above the regular sidewalk.
Hey, speaking of which, I want to come back.
It won't stop people from coming too. So when they impose taxes like this, because remember, 10% of our population have unlimited money, 90% are busted, basically. The 90% won't go, but who cares? The 10%.
I told my wife, I'm like, let's get a place, and come on, let's move to Venice. And
don't tempt me, because you gave me some good demographics. I'm already looking to get places overseas, Rick. And Venice is on the list, believe it or not.
I know how I'm writing about. Wait,
along those lines, but just really quickly, because I want to come back to the news and everything. A federal judge on yesterday, coming back to Mr. Trump, has threatened to hold former White House trade advisor Pete Navarro in contempt of court if he doesn't turn over the emails that are presidential records. So I was just wondering, is this actually
Peter Navarro is a guy who's wrong about everything. Trump did not in his cabinet and staff, he mostly did not get the best and brightest. He got loud idiots who agreed with him. And Navarro, has a history of just being wrong. And then he did some illegal stuff, and he's supposed to go to what, contempt of Congress and some other stuff. He's supposed to go to prison for 4 months.
Yes.
Right. Well, if you think about it, Rick, when the circus comes to town, the first thing they hire is clowns. Think about it. So we know the circus is coming back to town. At least it looks that way. And guess who's going to occupy the White House? A bunch of clowns. Because he doesn't, like David Halberstam wrote a book years ago called The Best and the Brightest about the Kennedy administration. And his goal was to hire the best and the brightest people he could find. Trump never read that book because I'm not sure if Trump can read. I think he's dyslexic.
Plus, he likes sycophants. He likes ass kissers. He hired Rex Tillerson to be his chief of staff.
Yeah.
Tillerson ran Exxon, right?
Yeah, Exxon.
Yeah. So Tillerson's like this big bad, like, if it was an 80s action movie, he'd be the main bad guy, this huge, this criminal who's kind of just coldly calculating. But that's what you want, because Tillerson, actually knows how to do stuff, and he left after less than a year.
He thought Trump was an idiot.
Yeah.
You realize what Trump was doing and everything. Speaking of that, there is, and I'm not quite getting this, because even if you're in another country, because I know yesterday we mentioned the person that is a dual citizen that got arrested in Russia. We've got to find out what's going to happen with them. But apparently there is an Australian writer. I know we haven't seen Shaquille for a minute, wish he was here, but on death row in China that said that they're not going to appeal their suspended death sentence for spying, as he has no faith in that country's judicial system and is too unwell to fight on, according to his family. So Yang Hengjun's family said in a statement that despite a total lack of evidence against the 57-year-old, pursuing an appeal would be detrimental to his welfare because the odds of success made it pointless and would further delay him receiving badly needed medical treatment. There are no grounds to believe that the system that enabled Yang's sustained torture and fabricated the charges against him is capable of remedying the injustice of his system. So definitely it looks like they're going to give up on this appeal, and maybe at some point.
Is the guy in China who has the death penalty?
Yes. The reality is these people are dead or in their serious trouble. Like the ballerina that got caught over in Russia. Absent a trade, she's a dead lady. In other words, they have to do a prisoner swap. And
yesterday Putin grabbed 2 more Americans.
That's what I mentioned and everything. And they said that under Chinese law, this gentleman Yang sentence can be handed down earlier this month, can be commuted to life in prison after 2 years of good behavior, and the move to abandon the fight frees up Yang's lawyers and the Australian officials to push for him to be released on medical parole. So we
should be glad that China is engaging in this kind of behavior, because under the previous premier or president, China was this economic juggernaut, and the new guy is kind of an old school dictator, and his dictatorial stuff is slowing China down, which we need because we're slowed down politically. We're not nimble. Another thing about Europe is all these little countries. If you're in Estonia and you have a good idea, there's a chance that the government is nimble enough, because you've only got a population of 2 million people, that it'll take the good idea and try it out.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There's more mobility and opportunity. In terms of China, my thinking is that person will be commuted. China is very concerned about their reputation internationally. Russia doesn't care. Russia knows their reputation is their thugs. But China doesn't think themselves that way. They think of themselves to be the new world order of, civility. So they'll probably commute the person's sentence to life imprisonment. They will not execute them, because China is very sensitive on their reputation. They want to be known to be the good apple of the world. Russia doesn't give a rat's rear. So if you're vacationing in Russia, like they said, get the heck out. There's hotels you can go to Russia, and you can go to Russia, but who the heck would want to do that? They're still holding a Wall Street Journal reporter as a prisoner in Russia. They're holding another person for 8 years in Russia. We still have Americans that are trapped there. So the Secretary of State goes, if you're in Russia, get the heck out. And I would agree.
Yeah, Russia has some, like St. Petersburg is one of the world's most beautiful cities. It used to be you didn't even need a visa. It's right next to Finland, and you could just walk over the border for a day trip. And
now, well, just really quickly,
you don't want to do that anymore.
Hey, Nick and Rick, what do we say to those folks that are from the? Hold on a second, Nick and Rick.
And St. Petersburg, you're right, Rick, is a very nice city. I would love to go back again, but the political reality is you cannot go visit St. Petersburg again until there's a major regime change in Russia.
Because what do we say to the folks that are from Cuba and China and other places that will argue? And I think that they have a legitimate argument, because there is Leonard Peltier, there is Mahmoud Abdul-Jabbar, I believe is the guy's name. I'm trying to remember it, but he's one of the MOVE people and everything. But there are some people that would argue that, and even some of the people that are on the MAGA side will argue that there are political prisoners in the United States as well. So is this something that we actually have, or do we not believe that there are political prisoners in the United States?
Of course we have political prisoners in the United States. Donald Trump is one of them. In other words, the thing is, he's being attacked politically. There's absolutely no question about it. And there are some other people that are political prisoners for various different reasons. So
we have 2 million people in prison in the U.S. And you could argue that the whole political prison system is political. Under Clinton had bad approval during his first administration, and he moved way to the center from the left. And one of the things he did was make things more punitive in this country. It was under Clinton that they came up with the theory of super predators, people who had to be in prison because they were unrehabilitatable. So and then when we put a larger percentage of our population away than any other developed country on earth.
And a lot of it is the quote war on drugs. In other words, so the thing is, what we have is people that are abusing drugs, and so hence we don't have any mental institutions or drug rehabilitation, so we just throw them.
It's not just a war.
So hold on, like crack versus cocaine. Crack is a different form of cocaine used more by Black people, and cocaine up your nose is more a white people drug. So in the 90s under Clinton, they made like penalties for crack, and like everybody in America was scared of crack in the 90s. They demonized it more than coke, and they threw a bunch of people in prison for teeny amounts of crack.
Yeah, it's something that is wrong, embarrassment, and will not be part of our political discussion. And it should be, because the thing is, we should not have 2 million people in the United States in prison, especially for victimless drug-related crimes that should be better dealt with drug rehabilitation centers and mental health facilities. So the United States.
Hey, Nick, I've got some other interesting news, and it comes from Durham, and I'd love to hear both of you and Rick's thoughts about this and everything. But there is a lady that has won here. So she went and got one of those lovely scratch-off tickets, and as the article said from one of our local affiliates, TV affiliates, said that for some 50 people may seem like a lot to plunk down on a single scratch-off ticket, but as the saying goes, no risk, no reward. And Patrick Brunson went down and put that amount of money off, and it paid off in the tune of $10 million. So I'm thinking that she's probably going to get, and I don't know her status in life, but if she's single, she's probably going to get a lot of people that are trying to reach out to her to get dates, no matter what she looks like, because now she's got an extra $10 million and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts about this, because apparently she recently went down, and as she said, she was in shock, but she went down, got some of them scratch-off tickets, and now she has gone from the poorhouse to the penthouse, at least temporarily. We'll see whether she can actually save and retain that money. But
she needs to get a financial advisor who says you can absolutely never again buy another scratcher, because you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, well, also the thing is they do the wrong thing to begin with. They should look at annuitizing it. They actually get paid more over a period of time, but they all take the lump sum distribution. I've been down this rabbit hole before.
That's by the way, Nick, that's what she did, because they said at lottery headquarters she had the choice of getting her prizes as an annuity of $500,000 a year for 20 years, or a lump sum of $6 million. She chose the lump sum, and after state and
Chose
federal
long to begin
tax withholdings, she took home $4,290,014.
Yeah, but it just shows bad choice number one. See, bad choice number one is buying a lottery ticket. The fact is, it's a negative equity bet. When I took my actuaries to Las Vegas, none of them bet anything because they knew all the odds and all the tables, and they go, "No, we're not going to bet on all that stuff." A negative equity bet means, hey, you've lost a certain amount of money in commission when you put your money up. So, bad decision number one is buying it. If you happen to get lucky and you win, you usually make bad decision number two, which is you take the lump sum rather than the lifetime income. Then you make bad decision number three. Notice the series of bad decisions. You blow it all.
But Nick, I imagine we're going to see a lot of bad decisions because there's a very popular sports betting organization they've been advertised on TV left and right because they're going to be moving to to North Carolina, the entire state. But FanDuel is coming here, and this is a sports betting mechanism that you can use to bet on everything from, I think, NASCAR to basketball to a number of other things.
Mark, anybody knows the math. Pure mutual wagering like that is a bad deal. If you want to bet on sports, bet individually with your friends rather than through a third-party vendor who's going to take a commission. And then
the VIG is 10%. You have to not only overcome probability, you have to overcome. We're going to take 10% off the top. I can't enjoy Vegas because I know math and I know the odds are terrible. And I used to be able to enjoy it a little. One sec. I used to at least be able to walk through the casino and look for money that people had dropped, which is a way to win in Vegas. Can't even do that anymore because you don't use money. You've got a credit card that you jam into the slot machine that just, like there's no cash floating around anymore.
But Rick, along the same lines, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, Nick, as well, because it is my understanding that on that particular kind of group, FanDuel and everything, that you're not just betting on the games. Because I want to say that FanDuel, you literally can bet on how many points a person is going to score, what the score is going to be in the first quarter, what the score is going to be like maybe in the first 5 minutes. But it seems like it's very divided to where the bets can be. So there's all kinds of side bets.
I was friends with a professional gambler, and then I also know cousin Sal, who's a compulsive and it takes to be a successful professional gambler on sports. This guy had to do during football season, he had to do 60 hours a week of research to see where the bookies had set the line wrong. And then he had to jump on it before they corrected it. Like he might hear news, like somebody broke a leg, the quarterback, and he had to jump on it before the odds shifted. It was a full-time job for him. And
yeah, and I have some friends of mine who disintermediate he'll never get on TV or tell what he does. He disintermediates the sports betting in Las Vegas because sometimes it's just like the stock market. Sometimes there's a little spread that you can make a lot of money on. But he's not he's a gambler, but he doesn't gamble. It's really weird. He just knows the odds and knows how to play it. He's a professional poker player. And he never gambles in poker. How do you do that? Because I know all the good players. When a good player hits on the table, I pick up my chips and I leave. He doesn't want to play the good players. He wants to play the poor players who think they're good. And then he calculates his hourly rate. He says, I make about $200 an hour playing poker. So he's got it down to a science. He's not a gambler, but he makes his living in Las Vegas. What happens is, unfortunately, most poor people walk in, oh, Lady Luck's going to save me. Lady Luck will not save you. You are so toast. If you want to make money, go to the stock market. The stock market, for the most part, is positive equity gambles. Or listen to what Sasha does on his Wednesday shows. Today, Wednesday?
Yes, Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
Listen to Sasha. He does covered call writing. I mean, the thing is, there's nothing better in making money than to sell puts out in the market space, especially on the video. So
great idea. They can definitely watch that show. Get ready to wind up. What other humorous story to bring up and everything? And I've definitely got to hear both you and Rick's thoughts around this as we close out. But apparently, North Carolina is known for a lot of things, definitely the food, the people, and the basketball, and a number of other things, even that Mother Nature and everything. But it is also known for its iconic Southern accent. I actually lost a bet when I was in college because I thought that I could not say y'all, and it was a part of my lexicon back then. It's not as much part now, but I definitely used it a lot back then. And I bet my friends that were from New York and other places that I could not say y'all, and I was losing that bet left and right, so much so that they gave up on the bet, and they reduced the bet from me. So I was glad of that. Otherwise, I would have been even further in the hole. Probably would have lost $100 or so. Speaking of betting, but now there is new research suggesting that the Southern drawl may be fading away as younger generations grow up, and the state welcomes more transplants. So definitely, North Carolina natives such as Mariana Morin, who grew up in New Bern, are becoming more of a rarity. So she was saying in this article that she noticed herself when she goes around that there are less and less of the accents. And so she said,
unless you're going into country music or politics,
not as strong.
Then if you're in country music or politics, you keep your accent or you learn how to talk. Like Senator John Kennedy out of, I forget where, but like when he shifted, he from Democrat to Republican, he got the accent. You need the so.
Yep. Well, just really quickly, and then we'll wrap up this story and wrap up the show. But they say the demographics show that nearly half of North Carolina adults, 49%, were born somewhere else, like Nick, and non-natives are now a majority in 18 counties, including all 3 counties that make up the triangle: Wake, Durham, and Orange County. So that's definitely affecting the conversation. So North Carolina State professor,
you guys do have a nice accent. You've got like, that East, like Georgia, you've got a sweet, mellifluous accent like Lindsey Graham, compared to like Texas, which has more of a twangy accent, which is kind of grating on the ears.
But that's interesting. But they're saying that our accent is disappearing. And I had that bet way back in the early 80s. So we're going to get on out of here. We'll have another enlightening show on tomorrow and everything. And we'll see some of our other guys back on that day. But we're going to get out of here, and we'll have Modern Investment at 1 o'clock here on Pod TV.
Right. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.